It was last year that my niece Laura got married in England. And her beloved Sam, his best friend, the so-called best man, he had a speech. The speech was brilliant, but also thrilling. He looked at the young couple, and this is what he said. Look each other in the eyes. Did you ever realize that if one of you gets killed, statistically speaking, the one that you are looking at right now is the killer? That's what I did. I laughed. But then, later on, I realized this is strange. This is about women, because men kill women. The other way around happens also, but that a woman kills a man is very rare. Men kill women. And in 2/3, the victim is the killer, the perpetrator, is her partner or her ex-partner. So, that is what we call femicide, the killing of women because a woman is a woman. Now I'm going to talk to you about femicide, and it's a difficult subject, but it's a subject that is for us all, and it's also something in which you can play a role. You can help. I'll get back to that later on. Now, it's something like 2 years ago that my wife Katien and I were walking the streets of Berlin, and we saw it written on the wall, "Stop femicide." Later we were in Paris, and we saw the same. We were surprised, because in Holland, we didn't know that. There is no discussions, there's no talk, but it has changed. Last year, January 23, in Zwijndrecht, there was a woman killed, and there was much more media attention than before. And that night, the then Minister of Health, Mr. Ernst Kuipers, was interviewed on national television, and he was asked on the policy against femicide. Femicide? Can you help me? The Minister of Health didn't know the word. It was then that we, my wife and I, decided to write a book called Stop Femicide, because there is a big lack of knowledge and experience on the topic, and that's why we decided to write a book. We interviewed 40 or 50 people, psychologists, social workers, police officers, relatives, but also killers. We wanted to find somebody who could reflect on their act. But that was difficult, because most of the men that kill a woman, they suffer from personal disorder. And to find somebody who has a personal disorder to reflect on his own act is not easy. We thoroughly searched and searched, but it appeared to be a mission impossible to find somebody who could well reflect. But still, we tried, and in the end, we found 2 men who were willing to talk. And the first guy was a guitar player from somewhere in the north of Netherlands, and he was telling about his girlfriend. She was nice, sexy, attractive, but also, like he said, crazy. In fact, she was nuts. For instance, she would wake him up in the middle of the night by saying, "I want you to tell me that my kids are better than yours." It's a bit strange. So one night it got out of hand. They used lots of drugs, lots of alcohol, and somewhere early in the morning, far past midnight, things got really out of hand. He ran to the kitchen, took a knife, stabbed her in the back, and she bled to death, and he fell asleep. The guy was very uncomfortable when he told us about this, and he referred to the murder as an accident. "Yeah, I know, it's my fault, but she..." That is typical for these kind of men. They consider themselves not as perpetrators, but as victims. And that was also the case with the second guy that we interviewed. There was a man in Rotterdam. This guy, about 40 years old, he lost his job. And by losing his job, he got so depressed that he thought that he failed. Failed as a father, failed as breadwinner, and he got more and more depressed. And he thought, I have no longer right to live. I'm going to kill myself. But then he thought, I can't do that to my wife and to my 10-year-old son. So I'll take them with me. I'll kill them too. So he killed his wife, and when he tried to stab his son, the knife broke. The guy was safe. He ran away. And what happened? Later on, the guy blamed his care providers because he had not been given the right medication. Victims, not perpetrators. We also spoke to a British criminologist, Jane Monckton Smith. She wrote a book that appeared in 2019. It's called Control. And in this book, she analyzes 400 cases of femicide. And in her book, she describes a so-called timeline for murderers. Men who kill women, there is a pattern, and this pattern is so obvious that you cannot miss it. And she developed a timeline that begins on the moment that the man is thinking of killing his wife or his girlfriend, his partner. And the timeline has 8 steps, and the last step is the killing. And the pattern in between is a period of what we call intimate terror, and this is also the period of red flags. And these red flags, they are so important. It's one of the most important things in what I'm going to tell you, because these murders, these femicide murders, they are predictable. And Monckton Smith made that very clear with a timeline and also with the red flags. The red flags are signals, warnings, and it is so important that we all know these red flags so that we can recognize it. Because if we recognize it, the problem of femicide can be tackled much more easy. So what are these red flags? Stalking is a very well-known one. Threats of violence, possession of weapons, withholding care, strangulation. The victim, the wife, doesn't want to talk, doesn't dare to talk when her husband is around. Control, sexual, he forces her to have sex. Violent behavior. There are many, many red flags. Isolation is also one. What very often happens is that the man will threat his wife. And one of the things that very often happens, if you dare to leave me, I'm going to kill you, or I'll kill myself, or our children. When that happens, the situation becomes really dangerous, very, very dangerous. Very often, men who do this are men that cannot accept that his wife doesn't want him anymore or has left him. So this pattern is very often the same, and that makes these murders predictable, like I said, and that's why it is so important that we know about these red flags. The period of red flags can be some weeks, some months, maybe sometimes a year or 2 years, and the killing is often preceded by a long period of domestic violence. Now, we talk with police officers on domestic violence because for them, the police is in the forefront of helping people. Police is for us all. And when there is a report on domestic violence, they go to a house and they try to calm down the situation. But then, a few days later, they will see the same couple that just had been fighting, warmly embraced, walking down the street with their kids like nothing has ever happened. So That's complicated. That's complicated. Very often people will say, if a woman is controlled by her partner or her man, they will say to her, why don't you leave him? The question is obvious, but the answer is complicated, because she, most of the time, is terrified, scared to death. She doesn't dare to leave him. It also happens, believe it or not, that she still loves him. Or she confuses fear with love, the so-called Stockholm Syndrome. So, for policemen, it's complicated. And in Holland, the policy against femicide is still not very well developed, we think. We looked at other countries and we noticed that in England, they are much more ahead of us. In England, a woman can look into the criminal record of her partner. In England, psychological violence is punishable. And the most surprising thing, if a woman has a new partner and he has a past of domestic violence, what will happen? The police will ring at the door. Hello, Miss So-and-so, we noticed that you have a new partner, but did you know that he is not okay? He has criminal past. Unbelievable in Holland. In Holland, every 12 days, a woman is killed. A woman is killed because a man decides so. Femicide is about power and control, and a man decides that a woman has no longer right to live. Every 12 days there is a killing. And it's amazing that it's still not very well known that this is the case, although it's getting better. There is something we can do. I said you can help, but it's also complex because domestic violence is very difficult because it's behind the front door. But to help, I will get back on that later on, but to help, first we need to understand what it is. That's why I'm here, that's why I'm talking to you, that's why we wrote the book. I have to say that the benefits of our book goes to the worldwide campaign of Orange the World against violence against women. But what I was trying to say, it is so important that we know about this phenomenon and that we help each other. It's difficult because we are not policemen or lawyers or we are just ordinary people who want to live in a safe world for ourselves and for others. But it is not only the responsibility of the professionals like politicians, social workers, psychologists and so on, it's also our responsibility, your responsibility. It's a shared responsibility and we need to know about it and know that we have a responsibility in this. It is so important and that's why I'm here. I mean, what can you do? That's a question, but I also have an answer. And my answer is a request to you all. If you see in your own circle of friends or family a couple and you notice that things are not going well, things might go wrong, talk about it. Talk about it. Because there are many, many things going wrong. And it is not normal these days how some men behave. I mean, we have this influencer, Andrew Tate. The guy has 10 million followers, and he talks about women like they are things you can do with as you please. That's ridiculous. We need to tell our children that it's not normal to do so, because this guy has the followers amongst male teenagers. We have responsibilities in schools, in universities, but also in parents. And like I said, it's a shared responsibility, a responsibility for us all. So that's my request. You can help. you can help by looking around and by raising questions if things might go wrong. Be careful, because it's complicated, but this needs your attention. And finally, your attention can save lives. Thank you very much.